Welcome to the Brew Crew Review Podcast, the show by fans for fans of your Milwaukee Brewers. Welcome back, Brewers fans, to another edition of the Brew Crew Review Podcast. This is podcast number 412. I'm your host today, Vince Travato, joined here on the set by the great man himself, Mr. Scott Bartell and Craig Mueller. How are you guys?
A little bit melancholy. Thoughts and prayers with our other co-host, of course.
Yeah, Chad is not on the set today, Scott. Where's Chad? I know you guys talked today.
Chad is regrettably recovering from the COVID virus, although according to him, he recovered in 2 days, and it wasn't that big of a deal for him, although obviously he stressed that it's a very important and terrible thing, but he's on the mend, and we wish him well, but he's not going to be able to join us.
Okay, well, we'll miss him today on the set, and we are, of course, wishing him a full recovery from COVID, and hopefully he stayed at home for most of the days that he was, contagious and not showing symptoms yet, because I'm sure that that's what he was doing. So in any event, Let's talk some Brewers baseball, guys. Lots to catch up on since our last podcast. Been a busy couple of weeks. Why don't you lead off then? What would you like to talk about today?
It was definitely an interesting couple of weeks for sure. I mean, it's been an up and down kind of roller coaster thing. I know it's a little bit frustrating as a fan, just seeing the team still with the offensive woes, and but they're doing what they can. They're scratching and clawing, and you saw them get within a game of being 500 again. And it seems like every time you get close to it, something happens. And now we're sitting here as of this taping. I think we're 3 games under at 18 and 21. I want to say something like that. So
yeah, 18 and 21 after the wrap up. We're taping this after the Brewers series against Cleveland ends today here on a Sunday. Brewers unfortunately dropped 2 of 3 to the Indians on this in this series, and I guess one major roster move we have not discussed yet since our last taping. Old news now for Brewer fans, but we can still delve into it a little bit more. Brewers designating first baseman Justin Smoak for assignment, a bit of a surprise move to me at least, and then claiming Daniel Vogelbach off of waivers from the Blue Jays. Vogelbach had struggled mightily this year with both Seattle and Toronto, and had a pretty abysmal second half last year in 2019 as well, after a great first half. Hit over 30 home runs on the year, was an all-star last season, but had really not played well for a number of months. What are your thoughts on the Vogelbach deal, Scott?
It kind of reminds me of like the Brock Holt thing. It seemed like a good idea at the time, like signing him. I thought it was probably the best available at the time that we signed him, as one of the better options available. So I wasn't completely against it, but obviously didn't get it done. And I think we're just kind of at this point where we're sort of just looking for a spark for our offense, and making changes where it needs to be done. I mean, unfortunately, we've only done 40 games or something like that. Unfortunately, it's only a 60-game season, so we're 2/3 of the way through it basically. So I mean, you can't just wait around for these guys to come around. So we've made some changes there. It's what are you going to do? And then in the rotation, we've made some changes too.
Yeah, and to that end, Josh Lindblom has been moved from the rotation to the bullpen. The Brewers, seem to express some sincere hope that Lindblom would work out as a starter. He was given a 3-year deal when he signed with the Brewers in this past offseason. Has not worked out well in his first 6 starts as a Brewer, so moved to the pen. I believe he had his first appearance out of the bullpen today. Do you see Josh Lindblom as being a bounce-back candidate for the rotation, I guess, at any point, either this year or we've got him for 2 more years going forward?
I don't see him joining the rotation this year, again, barring injury to somebody already in the rotation. But I do think that he will be a part of this rotation next year. I just think that he couldn't put it all together right now. And again, with that shortened season, we just don't have time to wait for guys to put it together. I mean, we're too far along, way too far along.
Yeah, I mean, to that end, it seems
I
like
would,
the season just started. Oh, Craig, you're back. Go ahead.
well, I would say that Lindblom, for what he signed for, I mean, pretty much just not too much more than an average reliever. So I would assume that he'd probably just be rotation depth from this point forward the rest of his Brewer career. Like if we can't have a better option, then he'd be there as either a long reliever out of the pen or else possibly a fifth starter. But I guess that's pretty much what we paid for him. But yeah, he's been less than, there was that chance that he could come back, from the Korean League and been at least a decent starter. But apparently he's just, number 5 at best, I guess.
Yeah, and it's really
that's
tough
what
to
we
project
paid for, so.
these guys. Yeah, exactly, Craig. We got him for 3 years. It's a little over $7 million, I think, on the deal. But it is really tough to project these guys who come over from, I think, especially Korea. It's kind of been likened to Double-A. So a guy like Lindblom goes over. He had played a few seasons in the big leagues, and then is lights out in Korea. But is that indicative of major league success, or is it just like any other player who does very well at Double-A? Trying to make a shot in the rotation for a big league team. And I think it's kind of a crapshoot with these guys, which is indicative, like you said, in the deal itself, where, you're not going to pay him the numbers that he would expect being a frontline starter coming over from Korea. But I don't know. It'll be interesting. I agree with you, Scott. I do certainly think that Lindblom is going to be in the mix next season. Again, we've got him for 2021 and 2022. So certainly I don't think that he's done in a Brewers uniform by any stretch. That being said, if he continues to struggle, even in this bullpen role, he is a guy that the Brewers could cut bait with and not really have too big of a financial loss at that point, just because the minimal dollars involved in the deal.
Now, who do you guys speculate the Brewers will put in? I don't know if it's already announced that they're going to go with Eric Lauer or Frank Peralta or something in spot, but who would you guys advocate for taking the starting pitching role here down the stretch?
I mean, my thoughts would be Peralta, just because of the shortened nature of this season. I mean, it's not like we have a ton of games to work with to try to figure it out. If we're going to be making any sort of push into the postseason, it's got to happen pretty quick, because we're already 3 weeks out from the end of the season somehow. And Peralta has had some success as a starter. Lauer struggled just like Lindblom did in his brief appearances as a Brewer in 2020. So I think that Peralta is your guy. The only thing with that is that you're taking him out of that role in the bullpen that he's kind of carved out a niche for as well. He is a high velocity guy that can come in and serve a real purpose coming out of the back end of the bullpen. And maybe that role has been taken up a little bit by a guy like Devin Williams, who's really stepped it up this year. But to answer your question, I'd put Peralta back in the rotation if needed.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, just because I think he's a higher upside than Lauer, but I think Lauer's got to get some innings pitched here in 2020 still. I know he's been kind of on the shelf and at the alternate site and whatnot, but we'll see what happens. But I mean, it is September, the first week of September 6th as of this podcast, and the Brewers are basically going to be battling either for the second place playoff spot in the NL Central, or they're battling like with 4 teams for one of the 2 wild card spots. I looked at it today in the standings. We're right neck and neck with like the Marlins, Mets, and Rockies. I kind of feel that we're at least better than two of those 4 teams, but I don't know. Our offense has been pretty much horrific this whole season, and as of right now, even going into the day, Christian Yelich is still straddling the Mendoza line, hitting 201, so that can't continue.
Well, yeah, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit too. I mean, to me, Christian Yelich is, if he has a few more very good seasons, he's got to be talked about. Again, not to overhype it, but a guy who could be Hall of Fame worthy someday if he were to continue to play like he has the last couple of seasons, and now he's barely hitting 200. I mean, what do you guys think is going on with Yelich, and what can the Brewers do to kind of course correct on him? Is it just a weird aberration in a very strange year? Is it something deeper? What can the Brewers do to help Christian Yelich get out of this?
Funny, it does seem like a very strange year for some reason. But no, I think that's exactly, and from my opinion at least, I'll let Scott chime in here, but from my opinion is that just mentally, I don't think he's ever been able to get on track, and I think that he's still the same player we've seen the last 2 years, but he just this is just like a mulligan for him. But I mean, I still expect him to get back on track before the end of the season, I hope. But I don't know. I think it's just been a mental issue going through this abnormal year, I will call it.
Yeah,
Scotty.
It's really hard to say. Like, I mean, somebody that has played, over the course of the last 2 years, as well as Christian Yelich did, which, I mean, you could argue that 2-year stint where Yelich was at the top of his game would have made him like just that 2-year window is probably like one of the best 2-year windows of any player ever. So, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous to see him, fall so far. But I don't know. I mean, when you look at it, it could just be that maybe pitchers are figuring him out a little bit. I think that's a part of it. It seems like he's getting tied up with a lot more like inside pitches. I think that the other issue is probably that the entire rest of the team, Yelich included, is batting .219. So, I mean, it's not just him. It's just basically since nobody's hitting, there's just no protection anywhere in the order. It's just crazy. But for what it's worth, we're like there's like a 53% chance as of right now that we still make the playoffs. So there's my positive take.
Well, maybe we should make the playoffs when 16 teams from around the league make the playoffs this season. I mean, it's crazy when you think about how the odds of your playoff appearances go so far up in 2020, and yet the Brewers are sitting here barely on the bubble. It's been a very frustrating year, and this team is I don't know what the right term is, but it just seems like they're lacking some life or lacking a spark. I don't know, and maybe that's why Stearns went out and got a guy like Vogelbach, just anything to inject life into the situation. But every team is dealing with 2020. Every team is dealing with COVID issues, some more than others. So I don't think we can really just blame it on that. So I'm wondering if this is going to lead to a bigger overhaul in the offseason than we might have anticipated.
Yeah, well, plenty of time to talk about the offseason. And obviously, I think that hopefully Stearns and the Brewers all together from kind of learn from this past offseason where quantity is not necessarily better than quality. And, I mean, literally, at some point this season, we had Logan Morrison hitting cleanup. We had Justin Smoke hitting cleanup.
Yeah.
I mean, we're just cutting bait with these guys. And now Dan Vogelbach is near the middle of our order when in reality he wasn't really wanted by any other team. So I don't know.
Vogelbach hit cleanup today. I mean, and despite looking like some weird iteration between, Chris Farley, Bob Hamlin, and John Jaha, I don't know if that's really the place for him on a contending team. But I don't know. It'll be interesting. I don't know if Scott, you talked to our inside anonymous source, Tom Carter. Do you see that the Brewers are done making moves here to add anything here in 2020? I mean, there's not much time left.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think Stearns is always looking to like kind of churn up the bottom of the roster, and obviously that's what he's done here the last couple of days. And I mean, I guess if it's not working, like at least he's going to keep trying and doing other things. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, but like I don't expect or anticipate anything major.
Yeah,
and
that's kind of
obviously
what Tom said too.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, obviously the trade deadline has passed, and we were kind of wondering going on, were going to be sellers or buyers because we were obviously straddling that playoff contenders line. But we only did really make one move, and that was trading David Fowles to the Phillies for 3 of their basically 19-year-old rookie ball pitchers with some upside, very, in my opinion, kind of similar to when we traded Adam Lind for 3 pitchers. 2 of them never panned out, and the other one was Freddie Peralta, who at least is in the major leagues. I don't know if you could say it panned out necessarily, but obviously that was a good value at the time for 6 years of cheap control of Freddie Peralta versus that half season of Adam Lind. I think that was a good trade, and I feel the same way here with Phelps, who was obviously just an under-the-radar signing for the bullpen and did a pretty good job as a Bird, and then we flipped him for something. So I think in a season like this, why not do a move like that? Were you guys expecting Stearns to kind of like, if we're straddling the playoffs, if we add one bat via the trade deadline from a team. Maybe it could help the Brewers this season. But were you guys surprised that a move like that didn't come? Because obviously the Brewers were in need of a bat other than Dan Vogelbach.
Well, yeah, like our anonymous source Tom Carter said, there was talk going up to the last minute, according to Tom and reported by our colleague Tom Hodgecourt as well, that the Brewers were engaged in talks right up to the last minute with some unidentified teams. Some speculated it was the Mets. I don't know. I was a little bit surprised, Craig. I think that the Brewers' offense certainly had shown by that point that they needed some help. I don't know who was available necessarily, but obviously things didn't work out. I do think that David Stearns does need to prioritize offense this offseason. I will say that.
Yeah, and out of all this, obviously, one of the couple of huge bright spots for the Brewers in 2020 so far has obviously been Devin Williams has been unbelievable, and I think he kind of identifies as obviously a future back of the bullpen, if not future closer for us, who's under team control for a while still. So he was a former first-round pick by us, but he kind of is this year's version of Trent Grisham, where he really kind of came out of nowhere and broke out, and really what great value we probably have in him going forward. So I think his presence will obviously, it sounded like when Brewers were open to fielding offers for Josh Hader. I'm sure that will continue into this next offseason and up to next trade deadline possibly because of that. And then the other bright spot, in my opinion, is Corbin Burns, who's finally been given a spot in the rotation. Seems to be really taking off with it. I think him and Woodruff at the top of the rotation as a 1-2 punch with some team control will really help the Brewers going forward. And I'm really glad to see him put in the rotation, hopefully left there for good now.
Yeah, Greg, I agree completely. I think that Burns has really stepped it up, and I'm happy to see it because I think there were some real, very viable concerns after last season, and seemed to sort of lack some mental toughness, and was constantly, moved by the Brewers from the bullpen to the rotation to the bullpen and the minor leagues. I think 3 different times last year. So it would be incredible if the Corbin Burns success story continues, and him and Woodruff can be a 1-2 punch in the Brewers starting rotation for the next 4 seasons or so, if not longer.
Yeah, that would definitely be great for our future. Talking a little bit about what you had mentioned previously about us looking up until the trade deadline to try to get a bat. It's definitely something I kind of would have hoped, but I'm pretty sure that Stearns was looking for someone under contract, not just this year, but at least next year as well. I think he was trying to build on that, and I don't think he was willing to give up all that much for essentially a 30-game rental. So I think that had something to do with it. And then, maybe asking prices were just a little bit too high. The one thing that I will say about our offense is that I really think that this is a scenario where not only do we desperately miss Lorenzo Cain, but we desperately miss just a table setter at the top of the order that gets on base in front of these guys and puts more pressure on these starting pitchers, our opposing starting pitchers. And not only that, but somebody with a little bit of speed that when they do get on base, the pitcher has to pay a little bit more attention to them, and it takes a little bit of their focus away from the plate. And I really can't stress that enough, because I think that when you don't have that, guys just aren't getting on base. It's rough. I mean, you see it in our offense. We're having a hard time stringing things together.
Yeah, I was really hoping Luis Urias would have been kind of that shot in the arm when he came back to the majors finally after dealing with COVID and other injuries and whatnot. And so he started off hot, but kind of returned to just being average. But it's really funny in all this. Orlando Arcia has kind of had under the radar, possibly the best offense in season as Brewer so far. So he's kind of, I don't know, he's only under contract for this year at a pretty cheap contract, but obviously that re-signing worked out definitely for the Brewers. But overall, it's almost like we really need Keston Hiura and Ryan Braun to be stalwarts in that middle of the location to protect, like Scott said, Christian Yelich in front and behind them. And it's like Keston Hiura is really going for some growing pains here in his sophomore campaign, in my opinion. Obviously, he's got some great power in him and a great bat, but there's obviously some holes in it, and you can see by his strikeout rate, really good pitchers really have their way with him at this point. And I think that'll change as he basically matures and grows into the hitter. I think that he will be one day, but this is kind of one of those growing pain seasons, so it is what it is. And then Ryan Braun, as a veteran, as possibly last year as a Brewer, it almost feels like he just hasn't shown up. Like, he's here, but I don't know, he's just not consistently in the lineup and providing protection for Yelich. And so, I mean, it's just like the whole lineup is a complete mess.
Yep.
Yeah, it should be pointed out. It should be pointed out that Braun is hitting under 200 this year as well. So you've got, I mean, and therein lies the problem. You've got both Braun and Yelich, two guys that we were counting on a ton, hitting right around 200 this year, and Lorenzo Cain gone, like you pointed out, Scotty. So it's really tough to get any offense going when you've got your two biggest stars, three biggest stars probably gone and out of the lineup, or not hitting at all. So obviously the Brewers are going to have to make some decisions. I don't know what's going to happen with Ryan Braun in the offseason, but he's going to have to figure it out if he's coming back for next season as well. And this was the trial year in many ways for Ryan Braun because we can use him as a designated hitter, and it's still not really paying the dividends that you would have hoped. I will say that, Braun, like every year, has been dealing with some nagging injuries, and he's also been, I think, of all the guys in our team, he tends to shine the most when, there's big crowds and it's a big game and those situations that we've seen him perform well in so many times over the years. So I wonder if that's affecting him more than it might many other guys in our team.
That's an interesting point, Vince. It's almost like without the crowd and the fans there to, really basically draw off of. And Braun's the type of player that lives for those type of moments. It's almost like he's out of his element, so to speak. And not that everyone isn't, but it's just like he's just not. Like that's why I try to say, like, it seems like he hasn't shown up. Like he hardly took part of anything pre-season starting. And then his bat hasn't come alive and been consistent at all. And like you pointed out, when you have three best players either not hitting or not playing, I mean, you're going to be affected, and it's had a ripple effect throughout our entire lineup. And it's just, I mean, our pitching can only do so much. We still have such a great bullpen, but I mean, with our starters being fairly mediocre overall, and then lineup not hitting, I mean, it's a recipe to possibly not be a contending team, unfortunately.
Is there any chance that Ryan Braun is a Brewer next year? Because I think there's a few things
I think
we got to think of. But yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I'll just jump in and say I think there's definitely a chance. I don't think that a guy like Braun, who's been the face of the team in so many ways since 2007, a Brewers draft pick, I don't think there's going to be any acrimony. I think he's either going to retire or he's going to come back. On obviously a much smaller deal and in a different role, perhaps. But if I had to guess right now, I'd say he's back next year on a one-year deal, and that'll be his last season.
I would say it's a good guess, Vince. And I think without the DH coming back, that's probably not an option. But I think the DH will come back and possibly be permanent going forward. So with that being said, it wouldn't surprise me if Braun does one more swan song season and a fairly good, cheap contract, so to speak, because I just don't think there'll be much of a market for the type of player he is now at this stage of his career.
Yeah, and he's been, very outspokenly particular, for years now when it comes time to comes down to the trade deadline and there's rumors floating around about him. And, he's been vocal in saying that he wants to stay with the Brewers. And if that's not able to happen, then he would like to go to the Dodgers. And that's pretty much it. And I don't think that there's really been much interest in him at the deadline from other teams because they knew that was going to be the case, not to mention his contract, but they knew that would be the case. And I think Braun either retires or he's with the Brewers. I don't really see him going anywhere else next season.
I don't know.
The Dodgers are so. I'm sorry. The Dodgers. I was going to quick say the Dodgers are so stacked. I don't even know if they have room for them on their roster at this stage.
Well, and that's the thing too. I mean, not only that, but I think most teams probably don't view Ryan Braun as a starter anymore. I think he probably would fit more into that, maybe a platoon fourth outfielder kind of a thing. But the other problem that I guess I could see is that Braun he could definitely see some at-bats at DH. But again, even if we have DH next year, I'm starting to wonder if that's going to be the role of Keston Hiura moving forward, because I'm not sure that he's going to stick at second base. I don't He hasn't been atrocious there, but he certainly hasn't, set the world on fire either.
Yeah, that's a real good point, Scotty. And especially with Arcia hitting better, because I still think that the Brewers are going to have Urias penciled in as being a starter somewhere in the infield, whether it's shortstop or second base or third base somewhere. And you're going to need to create a spot for him and for Arcia. So you very well might slide Urias to second base and have him team up with a very good defensive shortstop in Arcia. And if Arcia can hit, and he's made some adjustments, which it seemed like he was not making going into this year, but suddenly he's found that stroke at the plate. I think that you might very well be right about Hero.
Yeah, actually, the other thing I'm a little bit worried about this offseason is I always love the offseason because Stearns definitely makes more trades than most GMs, and it's always exciting. But it's going to be really hard to get value for your players if you look at this entire roster, you might be able to find 5 people that are overachieving. Like, there's just not many. And so you don't really want to sell low on these guys, but basically everyone in our batting order is low right now.
Yeah, offensively, I don't know who would be overachieving at this point. I mean, I don't know if I can think of one guy that's overachieving at this point. Mark Mathias, maybe? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, you could almost argue Arcia, but I mean, you guys had some great points.
Yeah.
The fact that, Kenson here might need that DH spot next year, and possibly, someone such a young player with great bat, you hate to move in the DH so early, but he hasn't horrible defensively. I think that this end of the season should be interesting. I mean, the Brewers have tons of games left against the Cardinals, including multiple doubleheaders, including 2 doubleheaders really last weekend of the season, and a couple of doubleheaders left against the Cubs. I mean, I guess I feel that coming into the season we were better than those teams, and so I'm still hopeful that the Brewers can make a push to kind of get into the playoffs and work some kind of spoiler magic, knock off some good teams or something like that, and just make it exciting. But I think it'll at least be an exciting last 3 weeks of the season.
Yeah, agreed. And one benefit that the Brewers do have going for them, in theory at least, is that the Brewers had a ton of games at the first month of the season. I think we had like 2 off days in the first 30 games or something. And it seems like we have a little bit more balanced schedule here in September where more off days are thrown in. We had one just last week on Thursday, and we've got another one tomorrow on Monday as well. So maybe that will help the Brewers a little bit. We still have the best travel schedule in baseball, and that's just a stated fact that the Brewers travel less miles than any other team here in 2020. So maybe that will continue to be a help as well as the Brewers play out the last 3 weeks of the year.
Yeah, definitely a possibility. I mean, I guess at this point, we're doing a good job of finding the optimism because there's not as much here as what I'd really want. I mean, if you told me the team would be hitting under 220 as a team collectively, I would just be like, there's no way. There's no way. This team is too good. And here we are.
Well, and if you would have told me at the beginning of the year, going into actual spring training, that the Brewers would have let go of Smoke, have lost Morrison. I mean, the moves that we've made, Brock Holt being another one, the guys that have, already come and gone from this roster here in 2020, it's been kind of astounding. I mean, our opening day lineup has already changed quite a bit from the lineup that we're, trotting out there now every day. And it's been a bizarre year all year. There's no reason to think that the Brewers season was going to be any different. So at this point, given the nature of the season and just the oddities that we've seen across baseball, I don't know what's going to happen or how to project this thing. The 16 teams in the playoff race, Brewers probably won't be eliminated if they are at all until the last, couple games of the year. So yeah, Craig, it should be exciting. I'll grant that one.
Yeah, I mean, and more exciting than fair, possibly. I mean, there's so many teams that miss games because of COVID issues and whatnot, that there's so many doubleheaders scheduled, and it's so tough to sweep 7, doubleheaders, even if there's 7-inning ones or whatever. It's pretty uncommon. So I mean, it's just the way that it works out. So I don't know. For the Brewers to really, I think they need to finish at least over 500 and get a spot in sitting a couple games under. I think they just need to play well the last couple seasons or the last couple weeks of the season, and hopefully guys step up. And if Christian Yelich gets hot, I think he can carry us into the playoff spot. And then from there, I guess this season it seems like maybe anything could happen. We'll see.
Sounds good. Scott, any last minute thoughts here? You want to? I know the interns got you some stats here before the show. Do you want to get into the next week a little bit here and preview what the Brewers have in the next few days?
Yeah, sure. I guess I could do that. Let's see. So we've got, I guess, a road 2-game series this week at Detroit, and I'm really hoping that we can get both of those. And then we start the crazy homestand where we play the Cubs for 3 games, and then we play the Cardinals 5 games in 3 days, and then 3 games with the Royals. So, Tigers and Royals are definitely teams that we can beat, and then we have that extremely important Cubs and Cardinals series. I mean, 5 games with the Cardinals in 3 days, that's going to be pretty interesting for 2 teams that are basically have the same record in the same division. Like, that's going to be a very pivotal series.
Yeah, you can scratch what I said about September being a little easier month schedule-wise, because I did forget that the Cardinals, due to their COVID issues, are going to owe a lot of games to be played against the Brewers. So that will make for a very interesting few days.
Yep, it's going to be interesting. And with all these doubleheaders and 7-inning games, I wouldn't be surprised if the Brewers are on one end or the other of a no-hitter before the season's over. Would not surprise me.
Are you calling it?
No, I mean,
You're
there's only like 20 games left, so that's highly unlikely. But with these 7-inning games, like, you could literally just have, Woodruff for 5 innings of no-hit ball and then Hader for 2. Like, would not surprise me at all. But we'll see.
It would be so Milwaukee Brewers for their no-hitter drought to end with a 7-inning no-hitter as a second game of a doubleheader at Miller Park with no fans in attendance.
No fans to witness it.
I wouldn't even be rooting for it at that point. Yeah, that's ridiculous.
I think at this point in franchise history, you could literally say, I mean, I don't know how many Brewer fans attended the game in Baltimore in 1987 on a cold, dreary night in April. I'm guessing like 10-ish maybe out of an entire stadium at Memorial Stadium. And so you can say that literally 10 Brewers fans or so ever have seen the Brewers throw a no-hitter, and that would continue this year.
Yeah, definitely possible. Although, if you want to go like super, super worst case scenario, you could say, oh yeah, Woodruff goes out for 5, Hader for 2, and then it goes into extra innings. They get a runner on second, and they score without the 8 of a hit, and we lose 1-0 in extras with the 8-inning no-hitter.
Yeah, always optimistic.
I guess anything's possible, right?
It really is. And hey, quick before we end the show, I do want to throw out a PSA for our fans. I can attest. As you guys know, I was back at home for a family thing a few weeks ago, and I did try to go to Miller Park at the time of the game to see if I could put a lawn chair behind the big panels in the outfield on game day, and I can attest that does not work. That they do have the area secured, that you are not allowed to tailgate, and we were kicked out in like inning number 2 or 3 at the latest. So it does not work.
Funny part of that story is I showed up about 5 minutes after Vince, never saw him, and I let my kids play on the Miller Park playground, and then we did not get kicked out, probably just for the children and no alcohol. So.
Well, we didn't have alcohol actually. We were just we did make hot dogs ahead of time and did not bring a grill to the lots, but did bring pre-grilled hot dogs that we had just wrapped up in foil, and we had like a bag of chips or something. And so we put out chairs and we put the game on the radio, and we sat there and we ate hot dogs and had some popcorn and peanuts and tried to do the whole thing. And it did not end well for our heroes, guys. I was surrounded by 2 or 3 fine gentlemen from the parking attendant corps, and they told us to leave as quickly as possible. But they did ask first if we had purchased something in the team store. So once they made sure that we had spent money at Miller Park that day, and that we were not going to be planning on spending any more. That's when they asked us to leave. So, anyways, just a PSA for our fans: don't try that.
Well,
you could at least purchase some secret stadium sauce inside the team shop or hot dogs.
I did. I did. I really did. In fact, I can take a picture and put it on our Twitter because that was one of the reasons why we stopped there to begin with. Yes.
It reminds me of that old episode of The Simpsons.
Can't buy that out in Washington, D.C.
That old episode of The Simpsons where they're at the arcade and then he goes, I'm out of money. And he's like, don't say that. And then they hear it and then instantly someone comes out and he's like, I'm sorry, you'll have to leave. That's pretty much it.
Pretty much what it was. I bought a Brewers T-shirt to give to a friend for a birthday gift and stadium sauce and a few other sundry items. Bought the new cap for this year, and once they realized they had my $50 or whatever, it was I was done. So no more parking lot for us.
I would encourage more people to come out en masse and still socially distance. I mean, there's plenty of room there, and I mean they can't get you all right, so you're just gonna have to bring more people.
And I actually felt bad for real because there was a guy, middle age or so. He was a dad, and he had a couple. It wasn't you, Craig. He had a couple kids. He had his 2 girls there and a boy as well, and they were doing the same thing. And they were eating, and they had just put out lawn chairs. And they had a game on the radio, and they were parked, I don't know, a little distance from us, and they had to leave as well. So, you had people that were just trying to kind of soak in the summer experience in Milwaukee or get a little fix of baseball. Even if you couldn't go up to the windows and watch the game, at least you could sit in the parking lot. And everyone was distanced. I didn't see the big deal, but Imperial Parking did. So yes, we were all booted from that setting. So maybe we should have played on the playground, Craig. Maybe that would have been the answer.
Well, we have 20 seconds to wrap this up. So I do want to say that, first of all, our anonymous source, Tom Carter, did mention that we probably shouldn't be going down there. That was just his take on it.
Stay classy. Go Brewers.
Yeah, stay classy and go Brewers.
Brew Crew Review 1 on Twitter. Thanks, guys. Go Brewers.